Hi, I'm Val Manrique from the White Mountain Community Garden, and this is AZ Mountain Gardening. This episode, we're talking about planting tomatoes, we're talking about worms, and a bunch of other things.
All right, folks, so we welcome you to the White Mountain Community Garden, and this is the Children's Garden. And my name is Linda Hoy, and I'm the team leader of the Children's Garden. And we invite you on Saturday mornings between 9 and 11 to bring your children. And we'll have some crafts and maybe a light little yummy thing to eat. And we'll talk about gardening, and we want children to get excited about gardening. Haley has been in the garden for 3 years. She's a wonderful gardener. She knows a lot. We'll talk about pollinators. We'll talk about fertilizer. So please come. We'd love to see you. And thank you so much. So our plan this year, Jessica, I think is, first of all, we'll get our fencing, our little picket fencing, and leaving the corners open because people step over the fence and tear it up. But right here, which is our main entrance, we'll have an arbor. We'll have an arbor. And the sides, we'll plant scarlet running beans, which grow up and have a brilliant flower, and then we have beans to eat. So let's talk about what we'll do with the corners. I think I'd like to put a sunflower in this corner and one in this corner. Now, one thing that I have discovered is there's a way to manage the foliage of our tomato plants more efficiently. We're going to have dowels that we can train them up, and we're going to prune. All of that wildness that we had last year was really self-defeating. We couldn't get through, we couldn't get to the fruit. So we'll judiciously place our tomatoes, which are heavy feeders, you know, so we need to really be careful where we put them and mark down where we put them so that we don't plant again in that same place. Now we have our strawberries in these 2 rows. Let's see what comes up. So that leaves us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows that we can plant in, and our potato bed. So we'll have the potato bed again. So we have a lot of seeds here. I think we should be very careful with what we actually put in the ground so that we can harvest. We need to be sure and thin the carrots because they glom up. So little fingers, little kid fingers can come in and help us thin those carrots. And then we'll lay out where we want to plant everything else.
Well, one of the things that the kids were talking about is growing watermelon.
Okay.
What do you think about that? Maybe in a separate over here?
Maybe I'm thinking that I'd like to use some planters around the periphery. Watermelon vines take up a lot of room, and we do have a dedicated pumpkin. So let's talk to other people in the garden and see if maybe there's a place to plant watermelons. So we're going to spread the herbs throughout because, as you said earlier, they really help to repel the critters, the bad bugs.
Oh, so we're going to...
Oh, we will absolutely be companion planting, and we actually have a guide that we'll use so that what companion planting does is they mutually support each other in their germination and in their growth. So we really want to do that. And protection, absolutely. So, you know, it's science and a lot of love, and we love our dirt.
So if we plant any kind of like rosemary or basil next to tomatoes, will they kind of taste like that?
No,
I mean, they
no,
don't cross, right?
no,
Okay.
they don't cross-pollinate.
Jalapenos or hot peppers next to tomatoes, or your tomatoes taste like that.
Oh, crazy. Okay.
But we have a guide for that,
Okay.
which we will look at. Okay.
I'm Esther Grantham and in charge of the greens area. We grow the greens even in the winter time.
It's the middle of March, and a lot of this stuff was planted several months ago, late in the fall. So we have mustard greens, we've got chard seeds that are just germinating and coming up now. We've got kale over here that most of this was planted last fall, but we've got some new plants that are coming up. It's all looking good. So today I fertilized it, and we got new starts coming at the end of April, so I'm gonna work those in. This is all cold weather greens that we keep going all winter long. We have spinach, mustard greens, kale, chard, and bok choy that we grow all winter long.
I needed to do something for gardening during the winter. Well, of course, I couldn't garden in December, but I thought, well, how about raising worms? Because the worms will eat my vegetable trimmings, and then they'll make worm castings. This is called vermiculture. And so anyhow, I thought, well, this is a faster way of making compost rather than let it sit for several months until it finally turns into compost that's good for planting. So I thought, okay, I'm going to do worms. So I ordered worms, and then I had to build the home for the worms. So what I did was I got 2 bins, and I have a bottom bin. It was an 18-gallon bin, and then there's a top bin that this is where the worms actually live. And so what you need to do is you need to drill holes around the top edges of the bin so they'll have some circulation, and then also drill holes at the very top of the top of your bin, but then also at the bottom, because you have to, the worm tea has to drain out into the bottom, the bin that's underneath. And also what I did was I put bricks on each side to elevate the top bin, so there's plenty of room for the tea to drain into the bottom. And I used the largest drill bit that I could find that I had in my kit, which is a 1/2 inch. So it's pretty big, and it made some pretty big holes. And it worked out really well. You can also raise worms in something like a 5-gallon bucket, or actually anywhere. They'll be happy anywhere, as long as you're feeding them and they're comfortable in their environment. Okay, so the holes are in the bottom of the bucket. Those were actually, I think, I made those holes a little bit smaller, but not too much, and also closer together, so that there would be good drainage of the liquid from the top bin. And also, you just put a really good amount of, well, I started out with shredded newspapers, but I would use, and I like to use, the coconut coir. So you make a really good foundation of the coconut coir before you put the worms in. So you really actually build that up quite a bit. And then, so they have a long ways to go if they want to go way deep. But I've checked, and they don't get down into the bottom bin at all. They seem to be very happy. They just stay where the food is, and I feed them towards the top. Well, what happened just recently, I realized that there was something going on with them, and they were starting to come out again. And I thought, oh, this is weird, because I've been feeding them well and keeping them, their whole environment moist enough. But I figured out that the very top, the top bin was, I just don't think that they were getting enough air. So I took that off, and I just kept I put down wet newspaper on top and wet cardboard, and that kept them happy. So I don't use the top anymore. I keep them in the light to keep them down into the bin. I don't want them crawling out in the middle of the night. So they like partially decomposed food. So food that's starting to turn and, you know, starting to get a little bad or soft or something like that. They like that. Like, I fed them like these old dark banana skins, and they love that. Okay, so here's a list. You want to give them your vegetable table scraps that are partially decomposed. And you can blend these, or what a lot of people do is they'll cut up the table scraps and put them in a plastic bag and freeze them for later, and then defrost them when, you know, they're ready to feed the worms. And any kind of vegetables or fruit is good. And okay, this is really important. This is what you do not want to feed them. No animal products. You don't want to feed them meat or chicken. You don't want to feed them dairy. You don't want to feed them fats and oils or hot, spicy foods. Also, don't give them preserved foods or any kind of GMO foods. Give them organic food. If you're eating organic vegetables, give them the organic vegetables. You don't want to feed them onions or garlic, chives, anything from the onion family or allium family. Just keep those away from them. Don't give them any citrus, like citrus peels or even citrus fruit. And stay away from acidic foods, like, okay, if you're going to feed them some tomatoes, make it very limited, because tomatoes are very acidic. And, I also read where you want to wash banana peels that may harbor pesticides, unless you get organic bananas. They love coffee grounds and tea and melons. They will eat newspaper and cardboard, but I give them enough food. Well, one of the things that you don't want to do, which I did when I first got them, is my first batch, was I overfed them. And this attracted, first of all, they can't eat enough, so the food starts to spoil and then it starts to smell. I didn't really have the smelling problem, but what I did have a problem with was fruit flies. All of a sudden I had a lot of fruit flies. So I had to get rid of those, and I found a way of doing that, killing off the adults so they couldn't lay eggs in the spoiled food. I put some apple cider vinegar, about a ½ inch, in a jar, and then I put a funnel on top. So the fly would be attracted to the smell, crawl down the funnel, and land in the apple cider vinegar and die. Okay, and then I also had, I put fly paper, these yellow sheets. See, I had this in a bin, but anyhow, this is sticky paper. I got it from Amazon, I guess. Okay, so this is sticky paper, and it catches insects that fly. And so you'll see a few like insects on here, but what I did was I just set it inside the bin and they would fly around. And so this is another way I got rid of them. But I use these in my garden too, in my planters, for flea beetles. Ugh, hate those things. Raising worms is great to do during the winter. You want to keep them inside, and I kept them inside in my pantry off the kitchen. They were very happy there. You don't want to keep them out in the cold. I thought my garage or our shop was just way too cold for them. But one of the reasons why I wanted to raise worms and raise my own compost and collect the worm castings is because I live in the city. And this is a perfect thing for urban gardeners to, make their own compost. Because I can't have a horse, I don't have the room, I can't, there are rules in my neighborhood where you can't have goats or cattle or chickens, any kind of farm animals. It's just impossible. So the best thing to do is raise worms and collect the worm castings, which happens to be one of the best organic composts for your garden. Last year, a number of members from the White Mountain Community Garden took classes from Kim Howell-Costian, who is kind of like the White Mountains guru on planting in the White Mountains. And we took a seed saving class from her. We were saving seeds from a number of tomatoes, and she told us a story about a tomato that came from Siberia through a man named Bill McDorman, who's kind of like a famous seed-saving guru. When we started the seed-saving garden at the garden, we used his booklet to follow, how to start saving seeds and how to, which plants to grow, and starting with the easiest ones and moving into more intermediate kinds and more difficult. But anyhow, tomatoes was one of the easy ones, along with beans, but I'm getting off the subject. So anyhow, Kim tells us a story about Bill going to Siberia and meeting a man who asked him if he wanted to get the seeds for the best tasting tomato in the whole world. And of course he said yes. So the guy left. His name was Sasha. That's all he knew about him. His name was Sasha, and he left, and he was gone for 3 days. So what happened is Sasha lived 35 kilometers from where Bill was, and that's about 21 miles. And he walked home, and he lived at the foothills of these mountains, the Altai mountain range in Siberia. So he walked home. It took him 8 hours to get home. He rested, and then he walked the next day. He walked 8 hours back and brought seeds to Bill McDorman, and they were wrapped in newspaper. So Kim she wasn't quite sure how he brought the seeds back, but she kind of thought maybe he sewed the seeds in his clothing to get through customs. But anyhow, so we had these wonderful seeds, and I thought, oh my God, what a great story. So I planted them, and last year I got a beautiful harvest from these seeds, from these tomatoes, and saved just about all the seeds from all of the tomatoes that I could. And so then this is the next generation. So I've started a bunch of Sasha Altai Siberian tomatoes. And one of the things, oh yes, I want to tell you, the reason why Bill McDorman wanted these seeds, or he was looking for seeds that grew in a higher altitude and in colder weather. And these are perfect for that. So it's an indeterminate tomato, which is kind of like it's kind of like a bushy tomato. It doesn't grow really tall like some other tomato plants do, which is a determinate. But anyhow, I have these starts that we're going to plant. So I'm going to hand them off to Ann Cameron, and she's going to plant these in the tunnel.
What you can see is that this tomato is fairly weak. There could be two reasons for that. One, it was probably, the soil could have been too wet while it was growing, or there aren't enough nutrients in the soil itself in order to make it nice and dark green with a really firm type stem. So in order to save this tomato, we are going to dig a hole and we are going to put white lightning all along this stem and then cover it and see if we can't save this particular tomato. So what we've done is we've actually dug the hole deeper than the tomato. So I got to go down a little bit deeper. We are actually going to take it off of this disposable container because we got to try to plant it deep enough so that we can wrap the stem in a like semicircle. So we put that in the hole, push it down like that. Then we take this and we actually turn it down like that. Are you getting all that? Okay, and then we're going to sprinkle white lightning on that, a little more than normal. This is the mycorrhizin, and this is what helps stimulate root growth. Okay, and hopefully it's going to have enough nutrients in there now to go ahead and start multiplying and rerooting.
Hi, this is Chris Coates. I'd like to invite you all to our initial seed library presentation on April 8th from 10 to 11 down at the Show Low Library. And we're going to talk about seed saving and seed libraries, and also some very, very basic planting things for those people that are maybe beginning gardeners. So I hope to see you then. Thank you.
So that was a lot of good information. Join us next month for more gardening tips and tricks. And there's going to be a garden expo here at the community garden May 25th from 9 to 3.